I'm George Curtis. Welcome to It's Your Law. Each week it's my privilege to bring you guests that know something about our legal system, how laws are created, changed, violated, enforced, not enforced, and impact our citizens, hopefully resulting in a somewhat more informed electorate, because the most important job in this country is that of citizen. And most of us talk it, very few of us follow through with it, and this is my small effort to encourage you to get off the armchair and do something about making this area, this state, this country a little bit better because of the benefit of your good thinking. Today's guest is one of three outstandingly impressive candidates for Winnebago County Executive. He's kind of got a bit of a leg up because he is the Winnebago County Executive. Winnebago County is a great big corporation that touches all of our lives more than any other branch of government. And so it's important that you pay attention to all three candidates and think about which one you want to be at the head of this large corporation in the next several years. Our guest, and I'm happy to greet him, is our current county executive, Jon Doemel.
Hi.
Thank you so much for
Thanks
coming.
for having me, yeah.
I think you have a very, very complex job.
Yes.
That you could take hours explaining it to us, and I'm going to give you 3 minutes.
Sure. Well, I can do that. I mean, county government is huge. And again, you're right. I think it touches people's lives more than they know. And it's this kind of entity that most people don't understand. In fact, there's a diary of a county executive by James Coughlin that one of his biggest frustrations back in his time, he was our second executive, is nobody knows what county government does. So they actually did this big slide deck, and he gave presentations to the National Counties Association, won all these awards for it, just explaining what government does. And county government's unique because I often say we're their punt returners. So anything that the state or the feds can't handle, or towns or municipalities can't handle, gets punted to us. We have nobody to hand to it, so we have to figure out a way. We do cover so much: safe and reliable infrastructure, public health and human services, parks, land and water, environmental, planning and zoning for any unincorporated areas. Municipalities that are incorporated have their own zoning. And the expanse is huge, from the solid waste facility we run, plowing highways, running an airport. It is a job.
I drive to work from living out in the Rush Lake area in the country. Sure. In the dark all winter. Mm-hmm. I drive home in the dark all winter. Mm-hmm. I get slipperiness, I get ice, I get traffic jams, I pass accidents, mm-hmm. and then these highways are treated with plows occasionally and salt mm-hmm. frequently, and my cars look like they've been parked in a salt mine after
Sure.
3 years. And I just think that's pretty much all county government, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. You forgot deer.
No, look at the front of my Suburban.
I'm sure that's why I mentioned it. Yeah, and you know, it's important that you mentioned that. The snow isn't really the important part, right? Because a lot of people have four-wheel drives, you know.
Sure.
Your vehicle can get through some snow. It's not so much the snow, it's how quickly we can get there. Right? So if we provide a safe and reliable infrastructure, we're out there not just to remove the snow, we're out there to make sure that a fire truck can get where it needs to be, an expected mother can get to the hospital, law enforcement agency can respond to a call. It really is about you being able to get to and from work safely every day.
And then there are the parks and all the responsibility that comes with public property on so much water that makes this area of the world unique.
Right.
But boy, there's a lot of potential damage and danger with all of that water, isn't there?
Well, there's a lot of things, grandfathered in. If you're talking about water quality, we've done a lot of development before some of these standards have been in place. We have agriculture that goes right up to the water, and that's fine. But also, our biggest park is blue. It is the water. There is a lot of danger. There have been things in the past where, again, government punted to us. The Coast Guard said we're no longer going to do buoys. Who had to pick up that tab? The DNR doesn't have enough people to do enforcement, so now our Sheriff's Department has to buy more boats and get out, and we're in charge of enforcing a lot of those actions on the water. For people tend to cut loose on a boat and misbehave a little bit, and safety is always a priority. It's a big challenge.
I think most people would be shocked to learn how big a corporation Winnebago County is
100%.
in terms of employees, dollar volume, and all of the impacts on our daily citizens' lives.
Oh, absolutely.
How many people work? How many departments? How many people on the county board? How many agency within the county that you have to interact with?
Sure, 24 departments, 18 of them are direct reports to me. So those are the ones that I directly supervise. As a county executive, it's my job to make sure that our operations is following the policy decisions of the county board within the budget constraints that they set up. There is roughly 1,300 employees, not all of them full-time, in Winnebago County. It is a vast job. Again, you have all kinds of different laborers, whether you're an equipment operator, highway, or at the airport, or at solid waste. The custodians, we have roughly 163 buildings that we own in Winnebago County. Not only the scope of county government, the diversity of county government, how many different functions that we have, and some of those partnerships that we have are unique, and it can be a challenge to hold it all together.
And at the top of the pyramid is the county executive with all of those keys to play on the piano, county board employees, labor unions, departments, and all of that. Must pay several $1 million a year.
Yeah, roughly 125,000. I think is roughly where it's at now, which is a good salary. Don't get me wrong there. And it's not so much the salary for me. It was what I had available when I was elected. There was one great man, John Fink, who had been in constituent services for a long time, and myself. The two people to hold 18 departments accountable. It wasn't functional. There's been a lot of change since I got there, and it's caused some waves, and I'm okay with that because we're doing what we had to do to hold that giant corporation accountable.
Let's take our first break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask you some specific questions as to your plans for the next stage if the electorate decides to give you another shot.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to It's Your Law. My guest is Jon Doemel, our Winnebago County Executive. Now, he's had that job for nearly 4 years, so I'm sure he's had plans. Some of them worked and perhaps some didn't, and what he's learned in that period. And then we've got a third segment coming up. He's running to serve again, and he wants the people to elect him. And in that third segment, we'll have him discuss his plans for the next segment if the electorate thinks he's done a good enough job to re-elect him and what he intends to accomplish. How does that work for you?
I think that works fine.
Tell us, what made you want this ridiculous job to start with, and what got you into it?
All right. Well, during the pandemic, I had a restaurant here in town, and I was very involved in community organizations and trying to get people to be involved with your neighbors. We can't just look to government all the time to solve our issues, and sometimes, in the past, we used to have all these great community organizations that would help out. Nonprofits. Hospitals weren't originally built by government. It was churches. We had very strong civil units out there. And we've gotten away from that. And so I was trying to bring some of that notion back of neighbors helping neighbors and society taking accountability for societal issues again, instead of just looking for somebody else to solve it. Well, during the pandemic, we were out there. Not everybody was safer at home. We were helping families with food and all kinds of other needs. And we were running on shoestring budgets. And we have some amazing nonprofit organizations out there doing great work. The Boys and Girls Club never shut down. Christine Ann Center never shut down. Day by day, the shelter, the warming shelter at the time, just kept going. And the one partner that I didn't see was county government. And when I found out that human service is a big part of that, they are supposed to be that safety net, and that was the year they had a $6.5 million surplus.
Wow.
Right, and I was a little angry. I'm like, and there's any year you should have had a deficit of helping people, that was the year. So I really ran to make sure that it had a presence, that it was being held accountable to the roles and responsibility it was. And I agree, the pandemic was devastating to a lot of families. I lost my father, but you can't be hyper-focused on one issue, especially in county government, because we have this broad range of things that we have to deal with. So I ran to make a difference in there. I ran to get people out of their office. I ran to meet people where they're at, so that we can actually partner with a lot of the nonprofits doing the great work and figure out the best way forward.
But I'll bet there was a learning curve that you bumped into helpers you didn't realize you had, and you bumped into obstruction you didn't anticipate.
Yeah, well, that's the point of the democratic republic we have, George. I mean, that's why I like this show. It's your law. People need to be informed. You have the ability to change your government. That's exactly what I intended to do. There are 3 principles that I read in a book by Malcolm Gladwell, one that said that for a functional social contract, people need to feel heard, laws need to be easy to understand and equally applied. And I didn't think any of those things were happening. Government is messy. Messy for a reason. It's the perfect system for an imperfect people. But that is what elected officials are all about. If you are a chief elected officer to hold operations accountable to a board of 36 people that are in charge of making policy decisions and budget decisions, and that person should have the right to be not only hired and fired by the people, the electorate at will, but also be a member of the electorate at will. There is a time and place for education for my department heads. They need to be the technical experts. As a leader, it's my job to make sure we're doing the right things, not necessarily doing things right. I look for the technical expertise of my department heads to do that. But then the decisions come up and I say, hey, are we listening to people or not? And that's the point. So when I walked in, it didn't seem that way. Policy decisions and budget decisions were being gatekept from committees. We weren't really transparent in a way. There was no way for you or I to follow what county government was doing. Resolutions were written a week or 2 weeks before the county board meeting. Meetings weren't televised. They weren't recorded. The minutes weren't exactly accurate. I'll tell you, there are things that happened in meetings that I sat in that weren't accurately reflected in the minutes. It is what it is. We were making policy decisions with minimal information. It was really hard to follow county government.
Well, and my impression, you correct me if I'm wrong,
Sure.
Is that you came into this quite idealistically, maybe a little naively, without a lot of political party contact and relationship. You tried to do it without being a Democrat or a Republican.
Yeah.
And you had ideas of change, and whenever you go into an established group that has a territory to protect and you propose change, you better sleep with the lights on.
Oh yeah. Yep. Big smile, thick skin, strong back, huge heart. And I don't have an issue with parties. I have a George Washington take on this. I believe his farewell speech was finest speech ever written. He saw the values of both Hamilton and Jefferson, and that's why he put them both in his cabinet. But hash out the ideas. That's what America's about. We're supposed to have civil debates on ideas. Not everybody has all the answers. Not everybody's right. I often joke there are days I don't even agree with myself, right? I have internal conflicts, but that's the point. Let's debate it, let's figure it out and move forward the best way possible. So I did a lot of a change, which of course rubs people the wrong way. I walked into a county board that was focused on operations. They were so busy picking the color of the paint that they didn't look at the determination, should we own this building? That's that 10,000 foot level that I wanted to get them to and hold them accountable to that. That also means that you don't have operational decisions. That's between me and my department heads to make sure that we're following the directions that you set. So a little bit of roles and responsibilities to make the system work as designed. A lot smarter people than me wrote the state statutes, George, right? So let's follow them.
Well, you went into it. Was this the first public office you ever held?
Yep.
Was this the first election where you got a free genealogy by being a candidate?
Yep.
And so you should take the time to write a book. And so you bumped into some resistance with people who had established territories
Sure.
that they were protecting.
Yeah.
And some things worked better than you thought they would. You got some cooperation where you didn't expect it, but there were some sticky spots too.
And a lot of silos. Our departments were working in silos of their own. We didn't have any kind of centralized government at all. Our facilities director didn't even have access to all of our facilities. We have all these people that work in finance in the county, but none of them report. Our finance function didn't report to our finance director. HR was kind of scattered. So we weren't looking at the strengths of our organization and that collaboration, and everybody was kind of doing their own thing. So therefore, everybody was doing finance as their own thing, and that'll come up in segment 3 as some of the plans we have to do, some of the evaluation we had. We had no facility condition assessment. We had no idea the shape of our buildings. We barely knew how many buildings we had. We've been working diligently on a strategic plan. Give me a North Star. Give me the fiscal forecast. Government is so much better if it's proactive versus reactive. That's life in general. So a lot of these things, it didn't necessarily need a government expertise. You need an organizational expertise. Now, whether you're a business or a nonprofit or a government, it's all organization, right? So we get caught up in business and the government is business, but organizational practices are the same, right?
We're going to have to take our second break,
Sure.
And when we come back, we have a final segment, and that's your opportunity to tell the voters what you have learned in having this experience, what you propose to do if you're reelected to use that experience, and why they should cast their vote for you. You going to be ready for that?
I'm ready for that.
We'll be right back. What about slip and fall cases in Wisconsin? There are thousands of them every year. Many of them involve ice and snow. Most of them involve serious injuries, fractures, skull fractures, even brain injuries. What should you do if you or a loved one slip and fall and have an injury? The first thing you do is take out your cell phone and take multiple pictures of the defect that caused your fall. A winter fall must be photographed with the winter conditions immediately at the time of the accident. Then go see a lawyer. And going to the lawyer next summer, when the ice and snow is gone, makes it very, very challenging to have a successful result. So the first thing you do is document the defect that caused your accident and injury. Welcome back to It's Your Law. My guest is Jon Doemel, incumbent county executive, Winnebago County. He's the experience of one term behind him. He's running for office, and because you have 4 years of experience and you have opponents who are qualified people as well, it's a real election. And what is your plan? Why should people vote for you? What's the next term with Jon Doemel as county executive going to look like?
Well, it's a weird ask. You know, I ask people not to vote for me. I ask them to vote for them. You know, vote for yourself. Vote for the person that's going to give you the power that you deserve. You're right. It is supposed to be a people first country. That is the point. We have 36 Board of Supervisors. Each one of them represent a district of roughly 4,200 people. So everybody listening to the show has a supervisor. Do you know who your supervisor is? You should, because that's the policy decision maker. That's the person that goes to the board and sits in the committees and argues the idea and ultimately has a vote. I'm not a big fan of executive power. In roughly 4 years, I haven't vetoed a single thing. I want to use the process. I want to make sure that we are having this legislative body in Winnebago County really guiding them to make those decisions. Now, one of my focuses has been making sure that they have the best information to make those decisions. I don't think that was necessarily the case. I've kind of dragged Winnebago County through this priority-based budgeting process, and it's been a long road, but it's important to get it right. You know, there is a saying over in the Sheriff's Department that slowing down doesn't delay arrival; it ensures arrival. Right? So that's what we're trying. That's what we're trying to do. So we have broken down every program in the county and departments allocated cost, whether you know, if it's staff time or capital time or operational cost to every program individually. And then if there's revenues, we looked at if there's any revenue opportunity, whether it's a reimbursement from the state or a fee or whatever that form is. So now that we've broken down what we do in Winnebago County, we looked at some of those revenues. We've already made some adjustments. Parks, for example, if somebody would come into the park to do a program, they would contract with us for a seasonal worker. We charge them $15 an hour. The problem with that is taxpayer pays them $15.80. Plus you match pseudo futa FICA. So we're losing roughly $6 an hour every time somebody wanted to rent an employee from us to help them facilitate their event. So a lot of things that we have to correct. One of my favorite things is a bounce check fee. We would charge the constituent $20, the bank would charge us $15. So we were all subsidizing bounce checks at $15 a crack in Winnebago County. We were able to find that by breaking down every program and looking at the costs and allocations. The next 4 years, we are going to take our time to go over our programs and ask why. Why do we do it? Is it mandated? Is it mandated by the state? Is it mandated by the feds? Is it self-mandated? Is it not mandated at all? And it doesn't mean we're necessarily going to cut programs, but we should look at which ones are effective. We should be able to reallocate costs to where we are having a better effect. If it's not mandated, we better make a good case for it. Are we maximizing revenue opportunities? Is it something we should be doing ourselves or contracting out? What level of mandate should we be doing it? A mandate is a minimum. We can go above and beyond that. Parkview is a great example of that, 5-star facility. I think that's a place where we go above and beyond the mandate for good cause. But these are all decisions that I've got to get the board to make. And that is why people should vote for Jon Doemel, because I'm the one that's going to make sure that that process is in place. I'm going to make sure as citizens they can see what we're contemplating. They can look at the agenda item report, which didn't exist before I got there, and they can call their board supervisor and give them a piece of their mind. And hopefully that board supervisor, when that policy decision comes to the board, they advocate for what their people want them to do. And may the best voice for a decision win. And then I'm going to be the guy that's going to try to follow that policy decision and make sure that that's the way it is. I don't view a county exec as a policy decider. I view a county executive as a policy provider, making sure my department heads are putting forward accurate information that allows people to make the best decision possible.
And this isn't a Republican-Democrat thing at all. This is nonpartisan.
Right.
This is hands-on, serving the public.
Yep.
And it's government at the basic level that's most likely to touch people's lives.
Right.
And it's something that people have got to be aware of. These are the people in the trenches that are going to look out for mother and dad and grandma and the kids and the orphans and the safety of the neighborhood, the highway.
Airport, yep.
Absolutely. This is the government we're going to live with or die with.
Right.
This is the government activity that's going to touch our lives daily, and most of us talk about it, think about it, and don't do anything about it.
And that's the idea of a republic. We are supposed to listen to our people. Now, it's not. I can't, as an executive, listen to all 173,000 people. That's why I rely on my county board to go and listen to their 4,200, which is still a job. An easier job than LA County in California. There are 5 county board commissioners for 10 million people. Now that is equally ridiculous. But that is what government is supposed to listen to people and take the direction from them.
Well, I am absolutely impressed and gratified that there are people like you who don't just talk about public service like I do. They actually get out and risk their time and their reputations to serve the public. And they do something that people should appreciate requires bravery, and that is stand for election.
Right.
And standing for election and voting rank right there with serving on a jury as the 3 most important things that do have a chance to make America great.
Right.
I thank you very much for your service and for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. It was great. This could have went an hour.
Thank you. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Some philosopher, whose name I can't remember, is quoted as saying, "All politics are local." And I'm afraid that has a ring of truth. We ask ourselves, are we better off than we were 4 years ago? Are the kids safe? Are the schools good? Can we trust the transportation system? Are the highways being taken care of? Is the water being protected? Is this a place I want to raise my children and my grandchildren? And that's why we have people who volunteer to run for office because they have an idea to make our lives better. That's why we have a duty to scrutinize, make honest judgment regardless of political party, and say, I think this candidate has the best chance of making this a better place for my family to live. And then our job is to vote. That's my opinion. I'm George Curtis.